Welcome everybody. Welcome to our listeners. We want to welcome you back if you guys are coming back, and we want to welcome you guys if this is your first time. We are the Juxtaposition. If you didn't know,
What's your name?
So
What's
my
your
name is
name,
Janet.
dog?
I'm Bernice.
I'm Nana.
And we have a very, very special guest on our podcast today, and her name is Ericka Parker.
That's a sick name.
Give her a round of applause. Ericka Parker. So today we're going to be speaking on exploring the intersection of self-care and faith. So joining us today, we're going to do a little introduction for you. So joining us is, again, as I said, Ericka Parker. She's the owner of a skincare brand called Silk In, and the host of Behind the Silk podcast.
Yes.
Welcome once again to our podcast.
How'd you come up with that name?
Well, first off, thank you for having me, and thank you for sharing your platform with me. I didn't want to interrupt the intro. I came up with Behind the Silk because the brand is called Silken, and Silken is very skin forward, beauty, self-care forward, external. And Behind the Silk is really conversations more than skin deep, where we dig a little deeper and explore self-care practices so that we can show up better in the world.
Right.
Nice. So how did you get interested in, I guess, the skincare and stuff like that? And how does it intersect with your faith?
Yeah, so I want to say that I've been a self-care girly all my life, but that's definitely not the case. I'm a very type A personality, overachiever, always have been, always will. So I feel like for me throughout my life, I've always taken the path of most resistance, and I'm working on that in therapy. So it wasn't until 2019 where like my world was rocked upside down. I had a very traumatic loss in my family. My dad passed away unexpectedly, and that just shifted my whole perspective on self-care and preservation. You know, my dad worked literally up until the day he passed, and I was just like, is this the life that I want for myself? Like, what is my purpose? What do I want to do? So I had this whole entire shift of perspective. So I actually took my self-care journey really started back in 2019, mid 2019, where I decided to up and quit my job. I had a background in forensics and pre-med, and I was working in a toxicology lab at the time, and I just up and quit, and I decided that I was going to travel sabbatical style for the next 6 months and kind of just like relearn who I was in this season, really take care of my mental, figure out what my next phase of life was going to look like. So I took those 6 months, and I would say that's where like my whole perspective on self-care really shifted. And my plan was to come back in 2020, the beginning of 2020, with a clear vision and take on the world. And obviously the world shut down, so that just went right out the window. But yeah, it was during that time period where I really dove deep into self-care, and then skincare being my main form of self-care.
Wow. As you're talking, I'm literally smiling. You know when you have we're not parents, but you know when you're watching your niece and nephew on the side like playing basketball, like just smiling in pure joy. The reason I'm smiling because it's like, wow, like for you to actually step out in faith and do that, for you to quit your job, because that's super tough. And for you to go out and travel and take that sabbatical, a lot of people yearn to do that. So kudos to you.
Yeah, like that's I mean, if I could, I would. I would definitely take sabbatical. And so during that time, obviously, sabbatical is a time for you to just rest, reset, as you said. And in our faith, specifically, that idea of taking sabbatical is not as common as we think it would be, to be honest. Being Christians and being in the house of the Lord and serving the Lord and being a follower of Christ, that's not, many people don't take sabbaticals, right? And so obviously we want to honor our body. And so with that, how do you think our faith in terms of self-care, how do you honor your body through self-care? Because the Bible tells us that the body is a temple, right? And so we want to make sure that we're honoring that. And honestly, I really think as Christians, that's a part that we miss a lot. We don't actually take advantage of that. And so how would you, speaking on that, what would you say in terms of how does self-care honor your body?
Yeah, so I am a believer that self-care requires you to be extremely intentional. And when you decide to partake in self-care activities, I believe that it allows you to create space. within yourself, right? So if we're talking about a faith journey and, wanting to grow closer to God and, be filled with the Holy Spirit, you have to create space for that to happen. And if you're stuck in survival mode all the time and you feel like you don't have enough hours in the day and you're always rushing and on to the next thing and your mind is going a mile a minute and you don't have control of your thoughts and your time, where are you creating that space for your relationship with God? So I think it becomes very important to be intentional about taking that time to slow down and to reconnect. And as you reconnect with yourself, you begin to reconnect with your creator automatically when you create that space, if that's what you're seeking. So I think being able to slow down and take that time is super important and allows you the space to grow in your faith.
I also was on social media. You saying that I was on social media one time, and some girl was saying how like growing up in an African household on Saturdays, like they would clean and all that stuff, and it's like she's like, as I got older, I get like anxious just sitting around and doing nothing. I feel like there's something to be done, and that's what I feel like with me is like there's something. My mind just races. I get anxious. Like there's a million and one things to do, but you saying that, like it also like it just makes me have some peace. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I also have a saying that I think people, because we're so used to being overstimulated, I feel like people don't really spend quiet time with themselves anymore. And for that reason, they either don't even know the sound of their own voice or they're even afraid to sit alone with their own thoughts because they don't know how to control them. And, that's where those things of mindfulness and meditation and journaling and all of these self-care practices that we can talk about later on come into play. And it's just not the norm anymore because it's 2024. So, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I like that you speak on it, but the overstimulation is just
Too much.
Even do like I wake
Phone.
up and it's I have to
Automatic.
remind myself, put the phone, don't reach for the phone.
Yeah.
Just sit in your thoughts. Thank the Father for waking you up.
Right.
If you gotta lay there, but don't touch the phone. And it's like somebody's working inside of me, just like touch the phone, look at Instagram, go on Twitter, and just overstimulate your mind and not really slowly wake up your mind through not looking at obviously Instagram and all those things.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. How many times are we on our phone scrolling on social media and watching Netflix at the same time?
Facts.
But can't find 10 minutes to do a Bible study. Like
Right. Come on.
There was a
crazy.
There was a study. It said that an average human like goes on their phone 305 times a day.
For
That's
sure.
nuts.
Your phone, if you look at that little app where it says how many times did you pick up your phone, you good and well picked up your phone
At
over
least 300 times. Yeah.
So
It's embarrassing.
yeah,
Real
it is
time.
embarrassing. Or you look at your time on your phone.
Yeah.
And how many
Screen time.
times are you at? Yeah, like screen time. And you look at it and you're like, you spend 3 hours on Instagram. I'm like, doing what? Not posting nothing.
Right?
Just my thumb scrolling.
Watching.
But how do we like, since we have like understanding of self-care in the context of our faith, like incorporating our faith into being it being self-care for us. So how can you find balance? How do you find balance between like resting but also being productive? And especially considering like how Christians have the emphasis on like having a Sabbath and having a rest day that we are able to just take and relax.
Yeah, so that word balance is very tricky. I used to believe that balance was a thing, but as I've gotten older, and I'm not that old, like I'm later 20s, but like I've come to realize that balance is really just like a false concept because there's always going to be aspects of your life that need you more at different times, right? So there are some times where I'm going through some really hard seasons and it's like I'm running to the Father. That's all I have space for because I mentally just can't take in anything else. And there are other times where I'm like extremely productive and sometimes, I feel like my faith takes a back burner, if we're being honest. So, it's really just being aware of the season that you're in, right? So I know when I'm in my busy seasons, I have to be extremely intentional. So like doing work on a Sunday is not a thing. I'm not checking an email. I'm not posting anything on social media. Like it's clipped for me. Like, And, if I have, more time on my hands and I have to be intentional about setting aside time to do the things that are a priority. So balance is tricky, but I think it always goes back to being intentional about those things.
You talked about earlier. You talked about like journaling and all that stuff. So, do you incorporate that into your self-care routine? Like, what's some things that you implement in your self-care stuff?
1,000%. So right now I'm using the Kume journal. Shout out to my girl Yelka from Kume House. She has a journal called the Kume journal, and it's a guided journal to really help you learn how to tell your story. And it's very prompted. It's a great journal. So I set aside time to do that in the morning. So I'll kind of just like run you through like a normal self-care day, right? Because I'm a believer of creating pockets of self-care in your day. So when I wake up, I'll do like an 8-minute devotional. If I'm running low on time, I'll do a daily bread because those are like 3 to 4 minutes.
Yeah.
That's a whole different issue. And then I'll put on some worship music and I'll journal for about 10 minutes. I'll either journal or I'll do like a soap exercise. And then I'll get ready for work. On my lunchtime, I try to be intentional about moving my body around midday. So whether that's going to the gym if I'm working from home or going for a walk around the city when I'm in office, being intentional about that. Doing my skincare in the morning, in the evening, making sure that I'm drinking my water because drinking water is an underrated self-care secret. Stay hydrated, stay happy. Please. And again, it's like, I think sometimes we think of self-care as this like big lavish thing where we have to go to the spa and the massages and the facials. And I'm here for all of those things too. Let's not get that twisted. But like the reality of self-care is really creating pockets in your day to focus on the things that you want to focus on. Like there are 6 pillars of self-care. I don't know if you guys want to dive all deep into that, but it's really acknowledging like what aspect of self-care you want to prioritize during that time period and just creating pockets in your day to get that done, whether it be 5-10 minutes.
Can you actually speak on the 6 pillars? Because I actually don't even know what the 6 pillars of six. Because in my mind, self-care to me is not doing anything.
It's just laying around,
watching TV, not going. Nobody's bothering me. I'm not going out. So I think it's important that we understand what are the 6 pillars, because a lot of people are they can confuse of what self-care is. Specifically, I'm thinking about like African Caribbean backgrounds, because we don't know how to take breaks. We don't know what that is. Self-care to them is working. That's self-care. Making more money, working 2 jobs, buying a big house, whatever the case is, that to them is like self-care.
Yeah.
But I think in this generation that we're living in, we are prioritizing that a lot more. And so, can you just go and talk about it a little bit, the 6 pillars?
Yeah, so doing absolutely nothing is a category of self-care. So the 6 pillars of self-care are physical, emotional, intellectual, sensory, spiritual, and social. So going back to your point, doing nothing may be your social version of self-care by not being stimulated by other people and really spending time with yourself. So social is, your interactions and your relationship with other people outside of yourself. I think spiritual is very self-explanatory. Sensory is really engaging your senses. So think of like aromatherapy or taking a hot shower or drinking tea or listening to calming music. So really engaging your senses. Intellectual is more like, think of like micro learning, reading, skill building, workshops, things like that. Emotional is getting in touch with your emotions. So journaling, going to therapy, meditating, finding a way to express your feelings. And then you have your physical, which is your gym, your Pilates, your yoga, your stretching, all of these things. So my recommendation is when people want to really create a self-care routine, I have an ultimate self-care guide linked to my Instagram bio, and it really walks you through the process of creating a self-care routine catered to your lifestyle. But my recommendation is always to pick 3 aspects of self-care that you want to focus on. And then again, going back to what I was saying earlier, finding pockets of your day to incorporate those. So for me, I'm focusing right now on my physical, my emotional, and my spiritual. So again, I'm journaling in the morning. I'm making time for prayer. I'm finding time to move my body throughout the day. And those are the things that I want to focus on in this season. So it sounds like I'm a broken record, but self-care is requires so much intentionality nowadays, but it's not complicated. Once you understand where you're at and where you want to go, it's a simple process.
I have a question. Yeah, I'm trying to piece my question together. So earlier you mentioned that your dad literally worked a lot. What is one thing you take away from his life and his work, like habits? Like, what's one thing that you observed and like, I'm not gonna take that.
Yeah, so for me, it's interesting because my dad was a very much do as I say, not as I do type of person. So he was always very open about things that he wished he would have done differently. And he was very open about a lot of the mistakes that he'd made. You know, we had a very good friendship outside of our father-daughter relationship. And one thing he always told me was, don't be afraid of what other people think. And he was very honest about there were a lot of things in life that he didn't pursue, a lot of dreams that went happening, dreams that he didn't pursue because he was just fearful about what other people would think. And I think that's something that I carry with me throughout my entrepreneurship journey. So I don't have intentions to work until the day I die. You know, my goal is to work smarter and not harder. My goal is to make time for the things that really matter. It's understanding that we are indispensable to the companies that we work for most of the time. You know, after my dad passed, within 10 days, his position was filled.
Yep. My mother says that all the time. They will replace you.
Absolutely. In a heartbeat, you know? So you really have to take ownership of your time. And I think we're in a very interesting place in the generational pattern of things where this Gen Z millennial, I don't think Gen Alpha is working yet, but we are not taking certain things from our employers. We are setting healthy boundaries. We are not breaking our backs to climb the corporate ladder. And I am so happy that we're seeing this shift because, again, it's about us being able to set those boundaries to create space for other things in our life. And I think that is extremely healthy.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's good. Because, my mother says that all the time. They will replace you. No matter how hard you work, no matter how much hours you put, they will replace you. And so it's more so like setting those boundaries and being intentional about what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. Like you said, work smarter, not harder.
And also, like, for me, like, it's the self-care aspect is such a big, like, thing in my brain, like, when it coincides with work, if that makes sense. Like, I'd be burnt out from work, planning like, okay, Nana, you're gonna go home and journal, you're gonna go home, like, or especially like on my break, you're gonna pray or you're gonna do this, but I'd be so tired from work that I cannot implement those things. So now on a Saturday, I try to catch up, but it's like I wanna just sit down and just do nothing, right? So it's like self-care and work for a lot of people that do that 9 to 5 really go like this, and it's hard to separate the two. Or it's hard to do the self-care because the 9 to 5 is killing you. It's killing my mom. It's killing my sibling because it's like, oh, I'm so tired. Like, you know?
But at the same time, it's like when we do put in these little bits of time and put those pockets in, we're able to continue and not be as burnt out at the end of the week or at the end of the day. And as you were saying, like it takes maybe that 5-minute journaling time or that 5-minute praying time to uplift you and give you more energy and a spirit of just, you know, just excitement. So because you're like, even though you're tired, like you spent time kind of decompressing your mind, maybe moving your body, stretching that 5 minutes. Because I know that when I go to like placement or whatever, I go to work, I just, even if I get outside and I just see the sun, it already uplifts me. And I feel like that's self-care to me, that it helps me continue to the rest of the day. So,
Moving on, but I was gonna ask, there's this, for me, I personally feel like taking time for myself, it could feel like you're being very selfish. Like my mom, sometimes I would like peace, you know, I love my mother, don't get me wrong, I love my mom. But there's times where you're just like, I don't want anybody to bother me. I just want to have time for myself, right? There's days I'm like, I'm not going to work. She's like, why? Why are you not going to work? What's wrong? Did something happen? So it's just like, no, I just needed a break. That's all I wanted. I just needed a break. So and growing up with my parents, they're very, obviously, I would call them workaholics. They're kind of close to the
borderline
workaholics. So they work a lot. And so it could feel like if they wanted to take time for themselves, it's like being selfish. Like what's wrong with you, or you feel guilty when you're not doing something. So, and that's a common misconception or feeling, I feel like, amongst just the generation that my parents are in. So how would you kind of overcome that? And have you ever felt that? The feeling of being selfish or guilty when you're trying to take care of yourself?
Absolutely. Like, coming from a Caribbean background, my family's from Grenada. Working is what you do. Like, point blank period. That's what you do. And, we have to be very mindful when we're taking criticism, advice, and feedback from generations that have come before us, because they don't necessarily understand the space that we're in now. I think we prioritize things very differently. I think back then the priority was you go to school, you get a good job, you make sure that your family is fed and you have a roof over your head. Those are your priorities. And I think now that we have a digital space where we can have these type of conversations, people are digging so much deeper and we're really uncovering some layers. And I think that's why therapy enrollment is at an all-time high, because we're like, dang, there's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
And I am a complete advocate that self-care is not selfish, because that's just what comes with setting healthy boundaries. And the thing about setting boundaries is that if you're trying to set boundaries with someone who's not used to boundaries, it's not going to be received well.
Yeah.
And you have to be okay with that. So when you have people throw shade at you for taking time at yourself, sometimes it's even canceling plans with friends. Okay, even forget about the family thing. I am one to cancel plans. Like, when I get home and I'm sitting on the couch, I'm like, man, it's 8:00. I'm supposed to be at dinner at night. I love y'all.
I love you, but
and sometimes that's just self-care.
Yeah.
And I mean, I try to give a little bit more advance notice and not do it last minute. But the point is, you have to know where you're at and you have to do the things that work for you, regardless of the judgment that's going to come from that. And I'm not saying not to be insensitive to how your actions affect other people, but you have to make yourself the priority at the end of the day, because you have to live with you.
Yep.
Nobody else.
It's true. You only get one body. That's it.
So what's some tips you can like kind of give people on self-care, or also just learning how to create healthy boundaries with work or friends? What's some tips you can kind of give people?
Ooh, there's a lot. So let's start with the latter, and then I'll probably ask you to repeat the question. But in regards to setting healthy boundaries with your employer, it's being very straight up. It's setting those boundaries early. It's very hard to retract what you've been doing. So if you're the person that's always been the overtime and the overachiever and answering phone calls and emails after hours, if you try and scale that back, it's going to be extremely hard. Because now you've kind of already set the bar for yourself, and trying to retract that is a lot more difficult. So if you're going into a new position, I just don't answer emails after 5:00. Like, my boss already knows that if he reaches out to me post 5:00, he will not get an answer.
yes,
Until 9 a.m. the next
I believe
morning.
in that.
Please. So it's setting those boundaries early. And, when I'm productive at work, I do my job. But outside of that, don't contact me. Working hours, don't do that, And then I think the beginning question was tips for self-care. I think the biggest tip is to experiment. You have to try things and find things that work for you. So, for example, like I'm trying to be in my gym girl era. I'm going to say that I'm a self-proclaimed gym girly, but I did a yoga class for the first time, maybe like 3 months ago. Never thought I would be a yoga girl, because I'm like, that's just not my thing. It's too slow. It's boring, stretching, waste of time. I can stretch for 5 minutes at the gym and then go do my strength training. No. Yoga is a thing, So it's experimenting. It's trying these different things. Try journaling, try sound healing, try getting massages, try meditation, try journaling, try increasing your prayer time, try being more social and networking. Maybe that's what you're lacking in your meter. So you have to be willing to try things and experiment, and you'd be surprised what sticks.
A lot of times people be like, oh, how is working out self-care? It hurts. How is therapy self-care? It's opening up my wounds.
Yeah.
How is journaling self-care? I don't want to talk about my past. How is going out? I'm wasting money. But it's like, if you don't do those things, you won't get better. Sometimes it hurts for you to get better. The wound can hurt when you put the polysporin on. It hurts, but it's healing you, right? So it's like the point is so true. You need to try those things to see what works for you. Because honestly, I don't like working out too, but I know it's probably helping my mind. What's those chemical things in your brain? The endorphins,
Dopamine.
the dopamine, stuff like that. People.
It's the happy
Like,
hormone.
you know, like maybe not drink that Pepsi early in the morning to like, you know. So it's like I feel like those stuff people should try. Like, for sure.
I definitely encourage the listeners or whoever's listening, journaling.
It's top tier, bro.
I love journal, and my sister,
She's
she's the one that's-
You know why? Because I feel like I'm like, am I writing in first person? Am I writing in third person? Like my mind just goes all over. Like who am I writing to? Like I'm so like analytical like that. So, but as you mentioned, the journal, that's me. I need organization. I need someone to tell me, hey, write about this, and I'm good.
This girl has been saying this for 4 years
No,
now.
I'm gonna take Ericka and really spark
Why
some
you need
joy
why you
into
need
you.
Ericka to tell you?
Because she's about self-care.
It's a different perspective. It's just a different perspective.
These people, they're able to just, flow with their thoughts. Me, I need like, okay, this is what you're writing about. Yeah. Okay, I can write about this. But like coming off the top of my head, sometimes that feels like work. It feels like now I have to think about what I have to write. Yeah.
But it's beautiful to see your journal prompts from 5 years ago and 2 years ago, whatever, to see where you're at.
I know it's true. It's true. I'm gonna take Erica's suggestion.
Oh my God.
And I'm gonna take yours too.
And you know what's funny about it? Like when people say that self-care is selfish, in my opinion, I feel like self-care is biblical. You know, like Jesus took time to pray. He took time to set himself apart from other people to spend time with himself.
Yeah.
And it was for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, so that's just my 2 cents there. But
No, but it's true. I quickly want to touch on that, but it's true. I think as Christians, we really miss that mark. Like I said at the beginning, we really do miss that mark. I've been in that phase where I've overworked myself as a servant onto the Lord or to my pastor.
Or to myself.
Yeah.
And I'm overworking like, oh yeah, this is for the Lord. This is for the people. This is to get the kingdom. And yeah, there's points where you might have to do a little bit extra, but I never took the time to, like I'd be working 7 days a week. That's craziness. For who?
yeah.
I'm not even following the Bible then. Because Jesus took time. And on the 7th day, the Lord rested. So how am I doing 7 days? And I'm not taking the 7th day to rest.
I was going to say this earlier too. Literally 2 years ago or a year, whatever it was, we were working some crazy hours.
Yeah.
One day painting and one day this. And we enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But then when you look back at the end of the week, like, yo, I'm tired. I don't want to be here anymore. Isn't this supposed to be fulfilling?
And the crazy thing is that you can't serve from an empty cup, right? So I serve on the social media team at my church. So I was working, my 9 to 5. We would have our weekly meeting once a week. We would have in-person gatherings once a month in person. And then you're serving on a Sunday. And then you're strategizing content that you're going to capture on that Sunday, on that Saturday. And it's like, oh no, this
Ghetto.
This is not it. And sometimes you have to find a way to take a step back. And there's a level of guilt that comes with that, right? Yes. It's like, oh man, is God not going to bless me anymore because I'm taking a step back? Am I wrong for not doing this? Am I being selfish for not doing this? And again, it's putting things into context. It's like, no, you cannot serve with excellence if you are burnt out.
Yeah.
That's just the reality of it all. So again, you have to create space, like we talked about before, to be able to be filled in order to serve.
Yeah.
So no, it's not selfish.
Yeah. She said it.
Yeah.
And I agree with it. She put that stamp on it. It's not selfish. And we all need to take care of ourselves. It's super important so that we can serve and we can be the best that we can be. and whatever we're doing.
For sure.
Right? As you said, Jesus did it. He took his time away from his disciples, his core people, and he's like, I need a break. I'm going to talk to the Lord, get refilled, get refreshed, and then he pours back in again. So as we wrap up, what is one thing that you want our listeners to take away, advice in terms of self-care, whatever the case is, something that you want to share and leave with them?
Parting words. I feel like I want people to understand that self-care requires being intentional. We have to choose that we want to prioritize ourselves. We have to choose to take care of ourselves. And self-care requires you taking action. So we can sit here and talk about self-care practices and how it's not selfish and different strategies and tactics that you can use to take care of yourself all day long. But if you don't take that first step in order to implement some of those things, then it doesn't make a difference. So take action, do something about it, figure out what areas you want to prioritize, and just go forward and experiment, try new things, see what works for you, but create a self-care routine. And if you have one, find ways to improve it or elevate it. And I think that your future self will be very grateful that you took that first step.
I love that. I love that. That's a good closing
It is
parting
awesome.
word. Actually, before we leave, I actually want you to speak about your skincare brand a little bit.
Can
and
men use it? The men with beards, can they use it?
Yes, it is a gender-neutral skincare brand.
Okay, speak on that a little bit. Speak about your brand and what it offers and all that.
Yeah, so Silken is my baby. Silken is a skincare brand inspired by city living. We formulate products that really cater to people who live in urban areas and who are exposed to high levels of pollution and environmental stressors. Like I said, my background is in the pre-med and the sciences, so a lot of science and research has gone into formulating these products. And we are protecting skin on a microbiome skin barrier level. And that's just what we're about. Right now, we are in our building season, hoping to launch later this year. So if anyone is curious to follow our journey, the journey of the brand, definitely keep up on the podcast because I talk about Silken on there all the time. Or you can follow me on Instagram at the Ericka Nicole. That's Ericka, ERICKA, because I'm extra special. Our waiting list at silkenco.com.
So you see, this is why I trust you, because that's your background. Okay? You didn't just go to someone and just say, hey, make this for me, let me put my name on it, and you slapped it. This is why I trust you. So I will be looking out for that.
Brand.
We're watching out for that. I'm
Appreciate
excited.
it. You guys can be in our focus group during our building season.
Yeah.
We'll send you guys some products.
I was like waiting. I'm like, I wanna order something from her. I'm like, but it's not ready yet. It's not ready yet. So I'm
sign up to the waiting list. You'll be the first to know. And we're having a bunch of in-person events soon, so it's going to be a really fun time for sure.
Oh, that's great.
And tell the people where you're located to. I don't even think we told them.
Oh yeah, I live in New York. So yeah, New York, born and raised, city girl.
Yeah.
Not in that sense, but
New York
in the city, you know. Like, you know, that's where I'm from, born and raised.
No, that's awesome.
Wait, what part of New York you from?
Okay, so here's the thing. I live in Westchester, which is considered the suburbs of New York. I live 5 minutes from the Bronx, so very close to the inner city. I work in the city. So there's this big debate that Westchester is like upstate New York, and it's like, have you ever been to Buffalo? Have you ever been to Saratoga?
Oh, come on.
Upper New York goes to Canada. Don't play me.
I always told myself if I wasn't from Toronto, I would definitely be from New York. Just the New York pride, like, you know, like I love hip hop, so hip hop was born there. So New York, and I haven't been there yet. That's crazy. I haven't been there yet.
Take a visit for the skincare brand.
Yeah, I'll be there. 2024.
I actually want to visit. I actually want to visit Toronto, so maybe we need to just do like a swap.
Listen, you come to Toronto, we will bring you everywhere. You come to Toronto, we'll bring you everywhere, and vice versa.
Vibes.
Well, thank you so much, Ericka, for taking the time out of your day to come on our podcast.
Yep.
And once again, we're going to leave her information, and you can find her, follow her on Instagram and all of that. And she has an amazing brand. So I don't even have anything yet, but I know it's amazing.
Yeah.
We're excited for it.
Other ones, man.
And so we appreciate you, and we're excited for what's to come. And that is all for us on this podcast.
Yeah.
We are the Juxtaposition, and like you know what you got to do. We tell you guys this every time.
Comment, subscribe,
Share.
That's it.
do it. Well, yeah.
And that's all for us. We'll see you on the next one.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye.